I was merely repairing lights inside a billionaire's mansion when a portrait froze me instantly. The woman in the painting was my mother's spitting image. When I questioned why her face graced his wall, the rich man paled visibly. What he revealed next completely shattered my entire life. You know, my life used to be almost comically simple. I'd wake up, brew black coffee, fish the river, read old books by the fire. Until one morning, I walked into a multi-million-dollar mansion, saw a painting, and my entire world just shattered. What if everything you believed about your past, about your family, was a lie hidden in plain sight, just waiting for the right moment to explode? And what if uncovering that truth meant putting the person you love most in the world directly in harm's way? My name's Rowan, I'm 32. I fix lights, but not your average light bulbs. I'm talking high-end, museum-grade systems for art galleries and, yeah, mansions. Sounds fancy, but really, it's mostly just me, my toolbox, and a faded Carhartt jacket, climbing ladders. I never thought I'd actually live in the world of the super-rich, but then my boss called, his voice tight. Win estate. Gallery lights down. VIP client losing his mind. He hung up before I could even ask where the hell Win estate was. The address just popped up on my phone, north of Seattle. A property almost as big as my entire hometown. I tossed my gear into my beat-up pickup and hit the road. Figured it was just a big house, a few expensive paintings, some burnt-out bulbs. Man, was I wrong. Completely wrong. When those massive wrought iron gates swung open, my jaw literally dropped. A white gravel drive snaked through towering red pines, flanked by marble statues, fountains dancing to silent music. The mansion itself rose up like a forgotten castle, all gray stone walls, a copper-green roof, windows stretching to the ceiling. I parked in the staff area, feeling like an ant who'd wandered into a palace. An elderly butler, perfectly pressed, led me down an endless hallway. The air smelled thick with sandalwood and money. I tried not to gawk as we passed portraits, Monet, Picasso, names I'd only ever seen in books. Finally, he opened a door. Fix the lighting system. Good God. The room was immense, maybe 5,400 square feet, the ceiling 3 stories high, natural light pouring in from a glass roof. Pristine white walls, walnut floors so polished you could see your reflection. Each painting had its own dedicated, museum-grade rig. Tech I was actually proud to have installed in a couple of smaller galleries. But here, everything was dialed up to suffocating luxury. I swallowed hard, set down my toolbox, and found the hidden technical cabinet behind a mirror. Touchscreen. Dozens of controls. The most advanced DMX system I'd ever seen. I started my routine, turning on each lighting group one by one. Warm white light flooded a cobalt blue abstract, making the brushstrokes rise like ocean waves. I moved to the next group, then the next, each painting coming alive under my hands. I caught myself smiling. That familiar thrill of controlling light, making art breathe, it always got me. Then I activated the final group. The centerpiece. The largest painting in the room, easily 3 meters wide, hung dead center on the wall opposite the entrance. When the lights came on, my heart slammed against my ribs. A woman's face appeared. Not magazine-perfect beauty, but the kind that just takes your breath away. Deep, haunting eyes, a straight, high nose, a mouth curved with just a hint of arrogance, long black hair cascading down. Her gaze stared straight at the viewer, as if silently accusing them of something. But it wasn't her beauty that froze me in place. She looked like my mother. So much like her, a chill ran down my spine. I stepped closer, closer still, until my nose was inches from the oil paint. The shape of the eyes, yes, the same slightly upturned eyelids my mother had when she smiled. The curve of the mouth, exactly like when she used to tell me fairy tales. The high bridge of the nose. The way the nostrils flared. Identical. Only, this woman was much younger than my mother is now, barely over 30. And in her eyes, cold, powerful, like a queen looking down on her subjects. I shook my head hard, cursing myself. Idiot. How could it be? My mother had spent her whole life in Ashford, selling homemade bread and wild strawberry jam at the weekend market. She'd left Washington State maybe twice in her life. This had to be a coincidence. But my heart was still racing, my hand trembling as I reached out and lightly touched the heavy gold frame. "What are you doing?" A low, ice-cold voice came from right behind me. I jumped, nearly dropping the remote. A man stood in the doorway, old, probably pushing 70, but tall and straight-backed. Close-cropped silver hair, an expensive gray suit tailored to a still powerful frame. Steel blue eyes that cut like glass, yet with laugh lines at the corners. He leaned on an ebony cane with a silver handle, not because he needed it, but because it screamed authority. I knew him instantly. Who in Seattle didn't know Benedict Wynn? Real estate and finance titan. The man the papers called the Silver Fox of the Northwest. I once read he bought an entire island just because he felt like it. I stammered, "Yes, sir, I'm the lighting technician." Lightcraft sent me to service the system. He didn't answer right away. He just stared. No. Looked straight through me. Then slowly, he walked in. Every tap of his cane on the floor echoed like a gunshot. He stopped in front of the painting and looked up at the woman for a long, long time. So long, it felt like the rest of the world disappeared, and only the two of them remained. I stood frozen, barely breathing. Finally, he spoke, softly but clearly. This was a gift for my wife when she was young. I nodded frantically, about to go back to work when my mouth opened before my brain could stop it. She looks a lot like my mother, sir. When my mom was younger. Really looks like her. I bit my tongue. Why the hell did I say that? Idiot. But it was too late. Benedict Wynn's face suddenly went ashen. I saw the veins stand out blue beneath the thin skin at his temple. His hand gripped the cane so hard his knuckles went white. The cane trembled, just a little, but enough. He opened his mouth as if to speak, then clamped it shut. Those steel blue eyes flashed with something raw. Panic. Like someone had just stabbed him in the heart. "Sir, are you okay?" I managed. He didn't answer. He turned sharply and walked out, fast. So fast, all I saw was the gray suit disappearing through the door. The frantic tap-tap-tap of the cane faded down the hall and vanished. I stood there in the vast, cold room, my heart pounding like it wanted to escape my chest. It was the strangest feeling of my life. Fear, curiosity, and pity. Pity for the most powerful man in Seattle. Trembling. Because of one careless sentence from me. I finished the job in a daze. Turned off the lights, double-checked everything, locked the cabinet. But the whole time, my mind kept circling back to the woman in the painting and the only photograph my mother still keeps of herself young. The one she hides in the kitchen drawer. On the drive home to Ashford, the sky poured rain that perfectly matched my mood. Gray, heavy, restless. I turned on the radio but couldn't listen. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. I had no idea that day was only the beginning. The beginning of a secret buried for over 30 years. And it was about to drag me and my mother into a storm none of us saw coming. 3 days passed, and I worked like a zombie, fixing lights in small galleries, replacing ballasts in museums. But my mind kept circling back to the silver-haired man and that painting. I didn't dare tell my mother. She'd always been sensitive. Whenever I asked about her past, she'd get terrible migraines. So, from a young age, I learned to stay quiet. But this time, the silence was torture. I dreamed the painting came alive. The woman stepped out of the canvas, called me in my mother's voice, then morphed into Benedict Wynn, cane in hand, eyes red, staring at me like I was a ghost. Wednesday morning, I was sitting in the office, really just a converted old warehouse reeking of bulb oil and burnt coffee, when the secretary knocked timidly. "Rowan, someone's here to see you." "Who?" She swallowed hard and whispered, "Mr. Benedict Wynn. He's waiting in the lobby and says he has to talk to you." I nearly dropped my coffee. I walked down the hallway feeling like my feet weren't touching the ground. There he was, sitting on a cheap plastic waiting room chair, his expensive gray suit glaring against the peeling paint and cardboard boxes. He looked smaller than before, shoulders slightly hunched, dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept in days. The ebony cane rested across his knees, both hands gripping it tight. When he saw me, he stood immediately, his voice soft. "Rowan, I'm sorry for showing up like this. May I speak with you for a moment?" I nodded like a robot and led him to the meeting room, really just a rickety wooden table and 4 plastic chairs. He sat down and exhaled, as though a ton of bricks had just fallen off his chest. "I haven't stopped thinking about you for the past 3 days," he began, his voice low and trembling. "About what you said in the gallery, about your mother." I swallowed. "I'm sorry if I said something wrong that day." "No," he raised a hand to stop me. His eyes locked on mine. "You didn't say anything wrong. On the contrary. You were right. So right that I haven't slept." He paused for a long time, searching for words. I saw his throat working. "I want to meet your mother," he said, almost in a whisper. "Whatever it takes." My jaw dropped. "Me? My mother? Why, sir? Are you sure?" "I have never been more certain of anything in the last 33 years. He looked at me, those steel blue eyes now bloodshot and glistening. "You don't understand, Rowan. But I'm begging you. Please, take me to her. Just once." I didn't know how to answer. 1,000 questions exploded in my head. Why did he want to see my mom? Why was he crying? Why was he shaking? But watching him, the most powerful man in Seattle, curled up small in front of me, all I felt was pity. Strange, overwhelming pity. I nodded. "Okay, I'll take you." The drive from the office to Ashford had never felt so long. I drove my old pickup. Benedict Wynne sat in the passenger seat, a spot I never imagined a billionaire would occupy. He was silent the whole way, occasionally staring out the window, his lips pressed tight. Rain kept falling, the wipers squeaking in rhythm with my heartbeat. My mother, Mara Fletcher, 53 years old, is the gentlest, quietest woman, living in our little wooden house by the river at the foot of the mountain. The place she and I have called home for over 30 years. Our house sits at the end of a red dirt road, right on the bank of the Nisqually River. 2 tiny stories, old shingles, a vegetable garden out front, and a chimney that always smells of baking apple pie. From the gate, I could already smell cinnamon drifting from the kitchen. The scent that told me Mom was baking the pies she sells at the weekend market. I took a deep breath and opened the truck door. "Mom, I'm home." She stepped out of the kitchen, apron dusted with flour, hair in a bun, smiling. The same soft smile she always gives me. "My boy's home. I just pulled apple pies out of the oven. They smell amazing." She stopped dead when she saw the man following me. He froze on the doorstep, as if turned to stone. His face went white, lips trembling, eyes wide, staring at my mother like he was seeing a ghost come back to life. Mom froze too, still holding the flour-covered wooden spoon. The air in the room turned to lead. He took 1 step forward, then another. The cane slipped from his hand and clattered to the floor unnoticed. His voice broke, raw in a way I'd never heard anyone speak. "Juniper." Mom flinched. The spoon fell and shattered on the floor. She backed up a step, hand clutching her chest, eyes wide with confusion and fear. "Sir, who are you? What did you just call me?" "My name is Mara. Mara Fletcher." "You have the wrong person." But Benedict wasn't listening. He took another step, tears already streaming down his wrinkled cheeks. "Juniper, is it really you? You're alive." Mom kept backing up until her back hit the kitchen table, her face aghast. "I don't know what you're talking about, son. Who is this man?" Before I could open my mouth, Benedict dropped to his knees. Literally. Both knees hitting the wooden floor, his hands shaking as he reached out, but didn't dare touch her. "Juniper, it's me, Benedict. Benedict Wynne. Don't you remember me? You disappeared. I looked for you for 33 years. Mom shook her head frantically, her voice rising in panic. "I don't know you. I've never met you. What are you doing in my house, Rowan? Who is he?" I stood rooted between them, not knowing what to do. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst. Benedict kept trying, his voice shaking. "Juniper, you vanished over 30 years ago. I searched everywhere. Don't you really remember? We were in love. We were going to get married." Mom's face went even paler, but not from memory flooding back. From genuine terror. Of a stranger who had just burst into her home, calling her by a strange name, saying insane things. She backed up until she hit the table, her hands gripping a chair for support. I don't know what her voice cracked, almost a scream. I'd never heard my mother raise her voice. Ever. Benedict froze, tears still falling. But this time, he didn't move closer. He bent down, picked up his cane, his voice broken. First, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. I thought. I stepped to Mom's side and put my arm around her. She was shaking like a leaf. I turned to Benedict, my voice firm. Sir, please go. My mom, she's not okay. I'll take care of her. Benedict looked at my mother one last time, his eyes filled with pain and utter despair. Like a man who had just lost everything all over again. He nodded slowly, turned, and walked out. His hunched back disappeared into the rain, footsteps heavy, dragging a lifetime behind him. I shut the door and held my mother as she collapsed into a chair, hand over her heart, breathing hard. But her eyes were dry. Only confusion and fear. Mom, are you okay? She shook her head, her voice tiny. I don't know who that man was. Why did he call me that name? Why was he crying? I couldn't answer. I just held her tighter, feeling her still trembling in my arms. That night, she went to bed early, but I knew she wasn't sleeping. I heard her tossing and turning, soft whispers in the dark. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind in chaos. Was he telling the truth, or was he insane? But my mother, she didn't recognize him. Not at all. So why was he so certain? And why, deep down, did I have the feeling my mother was hiding something, even if she herself didn't know what it was? The nightmare I sensed had only just begun. And for the first time in my life, I was afraid. Afraid for the very mother I loved most in the world. The next morning, as the first rays of sunlight slipped through the hospital room curtains, we were there because her panic attack had led to extreme exhaustion. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. I answered, my voice hoarse from a sleepless night. Hello? Who is this? Rowan. It's me, Benedict. His voice had sunk to the bottom of a well, as though he too had spent the night without sleep. Rough, exhausted, almost unrecognizable. I know you're angry with me. I don't blame you. But can I see you just once? I'll explain everything. I looked at my mother, lying half-conscious in the hospital bed, her face still pale, lips cracked and dry. I wanted to refuse. Wanted to scream into the phone, never to show up again. But a part of me, the curious, uneasy part, was screaming for answers. Fine, I said. Tomorrow we'll talk. We agreed to meet at the little cafe tucked away on an Ashford side street, the scent of old wood and toasted bread drifting out to the sidewalk. I pushed the door open and saw Benedict already there, at the most familiar corner table, a cup of black coffee long gone cold in front of him. He looked visibly thinner after just one night. Gray shirt wrinkled, silver hair disheveled, eyes sunken like black pits. He stood when he saw me, his voice soft. Thank you for coming. I sat across from him and cut straight to it. My mom is in the hospital because of you. Talk. What the hell is all this? He drew a deep breath, as if preparing to jump off a cliff. I once loved a woman. Her name was Juniper Hawthorne. At the mention of the name, he had to stop, his fingers squeezing the coffee cup until his knuckles went white. She was the identical twin sister of my current wife, Rosalind. The two looked exactly alike. Only their personalities were different. Juniper, she was fire. Bright, fierce. One smile, and the whole world lit up. Rosalind was colder, quieter. His gaze drifted far away, reliving old days. I met Juniper when I was 29 and she was 27. We fell madly in love. I was going to propose that fall. I had the ring, everything ready, but then one rainy afternoon, she was driving to my place and never arrived. His voice shattered into pieces. I called the police. I hired private investigators. I turned Seattle and the entire state of Washington upside down. Nothing. The car vanished. She vanished. All that was left was the coat she'd left in my car, still faintly smelling of her perfume. I sat silent, my throat tight. For years after that, I lived like a corpse. I drank. I went mad. I nearly lost everything. The only person who stayed by my side was Rosalind. She took care of me, ran the company for me, wiped my tears every night. Eventually, I married her, not for love. Because I needed someone who looked like Juniper so I could keep breathing. Because I couldn't bear losing her completely. He lifted his eyes to me, red-rimmed. The painting in the gallery? I painted Juniper from memory more than 30 years ago. When you said your mother looked like her, I thought I was dreaming. Rowan, your mother is Juniper. I'm absolutely certain. The world spun. The entire cafe shrank until all I could hear was my own heart pounding. But my mom's name is Mara. She's lived here for over 30 years. She doesn't remember anything. Benedict nodded slowly. I know. She probably lost her memory after the accident. But I need to see her just once more. I need to know why she left without a word. I need to close this door, no matter how it closes. He reached across the table and grasped my hand. His was ice cold and trembling. Please, let me see her. I looked into the eyes of a man who had carried this pain for half his life, and I nodded. I never imagined I had just opened a different door. One that led straight to hell. The days that followed were the longest of my life. Benedict started coming to the house regularly. No luxury car, no bodyguards, just him driving an old Jeep, wearing turtlenecks and faded jeans, looking more like a retired grandfather than a billionaire. He brought donuts, wildflowers picked from the roadside, old photographs carefully wrapped in plastic to keep them from creasing. But my mother hid from him. Every time she heard his car pull up, she quietly slipped out the back, locked herself in her room, or pretended to sleep. Once, he stood on the porch for a full hour in the drizzle. I finally invited him in, but Mom never came down. I made him tea and listened to him talk about Juniper, about weekend drives along the Oregon coast, about the time she laughed until she cried because he dropped an entire cake on his shirt. I was torn in half between them. On one side, my mother, the woman who raised me on toast and fairy tales, now curled up inside an invisible terror. On the other, the silver-haired old man who showed up every day with a flicker of hope in exhausted eyes. Then one pouring afternoon, Mom called me into her room. Son, tell him to come in. I could hardly believe my ears. Benedict stepped inside, soaked. Rain dripping from his hair onto the floor. He stopped at the kitchen doorway, afraid to take another step, as if one more might shatter everything. Mom sat at the table, hands wrapped around a mug of herbal tea, staring straight ahead. Mr. Wynne, she said, her voice unnaturally calm, though I could hear the tremor beneath it. I am a woman who had a husband and a son. My husband died 10 years ago. I have a peaceful life here, and I want to keep it that way. Benedict stood frozen. I truly don't remember the woman named Juniper you keep talking about. Maybe long ago I knew you. Maybe I once had feelings for you. I don't know. But that person, if she really was me, no longer exists. For more than 30 years, I have lived here as Mara Fletcher, Rowan's mother, and that is the only life I know. Please respect that. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Mom continued, her voice soft yet sharp as a blade. Please don't come here anymore. Don't bring the past to destroy my present. I'm begging you. The air in the kitchen was so heavy I could hear every raindrop on the roof. Benedict bowed his head for a very long time. Then he nodded slowly, like a man whose spine had just been pulled out. I understand, he said, his voice raw. I'm sorry for disturbing you. I won't come back. He turned and walked out, shoulders hunched under the rain. I ran after him, wanting to say something, but he only raised a hand to stop me. Let her be, Rowan. She's chosen her new life. I'm just the past. He climbed into the Jeep and drove off without looking back, disappearing around the bend in the downpour. I went back inside. Mom sat motionless, the tea long cold in her hands. She wasn't crying. She just stared out the window where the rain kept falling. I stood behind her, wanting to hug her, but not daring to. Because for the first time, I realized my mother no longer knew who she was. And that feeling hurt more than anything I had ever experienced. In the weeks that followed, our house sank into a heavy silence. Mom still got up early to bake, still weeded the garden, still smiled at me every morning. But that smile was as fragile as the sugar glaze on sponge cake. One light touch, and it would shatter. She never mentioned Benedict again, never asked if he had come back. It was as if by never speaking of it, the whole thing would simply disappear. But I couldn't stop thinking. I began watching Benedict from a distance. He truly never came to the house again. Yet, I still saw him. He would park 2 streets away in his old Jeep and just sit there, staring toward our kitchen window. On the coldest nights, when the wind cut like a knife, he stayed until late, breath fogging the windshield. I watched from behind the curtains as he wiped the glass, looked again, wiped again. He never honked, never got out. He just sat like an old man waiting for someone from a past life to return. I knew he wasn't lying. A man with his power had no reason to stage such a clumsy act. But my mother wasn't lying either. She had never lied to me, not once. So where was the truth? That question gnawed at me every day. I started remembering the tiny moments when, as a child, I'd asked, "Mom, where were you from before?" She would only smile, pat my head, then suddenly clutch her temples in pain. My father, the gentleman who died 10 years ago, would pull me outside and whisper, "Don't ask your mother about the past, son. It gives her terrible headaches." I was little, so I obeyed. Eventually, I stopped asking. Now, looking back, I wanted to slap myself for being so stupid. The unease grew until I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, listening to the Nisqually River rushing outside, the wind whistling through the cracks, and I knew I had to do something. I couldn't keep pretending everything was normal. I started investigating alone. First, old Mrs. Gladys at the general store. She's so old she needs a cane, but her memory is sharp as ever. "Oh, your mother wasn't from around here," she said, chewing gum, squinting at me. I remember it clear as day. One stormy night, your dad carried a soaking wet woman up from the riverbank, covered in blood. He was shouting for help. I was young then, ran out to see. Lord, she was beautiful, like an angel fallen to earth, but her face was bruised, her head split open. I swallowed hard. Then what? Your dad took her to the old clinic. A few days later, she woke up, but she didn't remember anything. No name, no home, no one came looking. Your dad brought her food every day. Then somehow, they fell in love, got married, and you were the result of that rainy night. I thanked her, my heart pounding, and ran straight to old Tom, the former town sheriff. Tom sat in his creaky armchair, taking a long drag on his pipe. "Yeah, I remember." The file's still there. It was my first case as a rookie. I wrote the report myself. Unidentified woman, no ID, no fingerprints in the system, no missing person report that matched. We called her Jane Doe for a while, but the doctor said she needed a real name for the paperwork. Your dad suggested Mara. Said it sounded like the river flowing, and that's how she became Mara Fletcher. He looked at me through cloudy eyes. "Want to see the file? It's still at the old clinic. Helen keeps it." I bolted out of his house like the devil was chasing me. The old clinic is now just a leaning, one-story wooden building, the white lettering on the sign half peeled away. Helen, the retired nurse who still volunteers to watch the place, opened the door with a warm, wrinkled smile. "Rowan, haven't seen you in ages. Come in, it's cold." I gave her the short version. She listened, nodded, then without a word, led me down to the basement. The smell of old paper, antiseptic, and mildew hit me hard. She shone her phone flashlight over towering stacks of files. "Looking for 1991, 1992. Here we go." She pulled out a thick, yellowed cardboard folder tied with red string. Handwritten on the cover in faded ink, "Emergency case. Female. Approximately 28 to 32 years old. Identity unknown. October 14th, 1991. My hands shook as I opened it. First page, the old sheriff's report. Female found unconscious at 2:13 a.m. on the Nisqually Riverbank near the old wooden bridge. Multiple traumatic injuries. Signs of fall from height or motor vehicle accident. No identification. No matching missing person reports. Next page, doctor's notes. Multiple contusions to head, torso, limbs. 3 fractured ribs. Severe traumatic brain injury. Evidence of prolonged oxygen deprivation. Suspected near drowning. Prognosis poor. I turned the pages, paper rustling loudly in the silence. Entry from the 7th day after the accident. Patient regained consciousness. Responsive to light and sound. However, complete long-term amnesia. No recollection of name, origin, or personal history. Strong emotional reaction to certain proper names, especially those containing June. Recommend long-term psychological monitoring. The final page was a small sheet in my father's familiar, slanted handwriting. I recognized it instantly. I request to take responsibility for the care and support of the patient. New name, Mara Fletcher. Reason? No known family. Below it, my father's signature next to the doctor's and the sheriff's. I sank to the basement floor, the folder falling with a thud. Helen rested a hand on my shoulder, her voice soft. Your dad was the best man I ever knew, Rowan. He saved your mother from death and gave her a whole new life. Don't blame anyone. I couldn't cry. My throat just locked tight as if someone were squeezing it. I took the old folder home and hid it under my bed. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, staring at the river, watching the black water rush under the moon. More than 30 years ago, my mother, or Juniper, had washed up here. Nameless. Memoryless. Nearly dead. My father saved her. Gave her a new name. Loved her. Gave her a son. And Benedict Wynne had been searching for her for 33 years straight. 2 men. 2 lives. 1 woman. And I was standing right on the fault line of a truth buried so deep I was terrified I might fall in. I clutched the yellowed folder, my heart heavy, as if someone had poured lead into my chest. Everything Benedict said was true. But my mother's real past was murky, pitch black, and far more terrifying than any nightmare I'd ever had. I hid the file at the very bottom of my closet, too scared to let Mom see it. Every night, I lay listening to her tossing and turning in the next room, soft whispers slipping through the cracks like wind through a window. I wanted to ask her. Wanted to shout that I knew everything now. But every time I opened my mouth, only meaningless words came out. Mom, eat a little more. It's getting cold, Mom. I was terrified. Terrified that if I pushed too hard, she would shatter. Then one Saturday afternoon, the phone rang. It was Benedict. His voice was soft, almost shy. Rowan, I'm having a small gathering at the house this weekend. Just a few old friends, nothing loud. I'd like to invite you and your mother. I want to apologize to her properly, in front of everyone, so she knows I mean no harm. I was about to refuse instantly, but he added one sentence that silenced me. If she doesn't want me around after this, I will never bother her again. Just this once. I told Mom. She was kneading pumpkin pie dough. Her hands froze midair, white flour drifting down like snow onto the cutting board. There's no need, son. I went beside her and took her hands. Those flour-dusted, calloused hands that had washed dishes, kneaded dough, and wiped my tears for over 30 years. Mom, I think you should go. Just once. To put it all behind us. I can't stand seeing you this afraid anymore. She looked at me for a long time. Her eyes clouded, then she nodded, her voice barely audible. All right. For you. I'll go. The day came faster than I expected. I drove Mom up to Wynne Estate. She wore her old forest green wool dress, the one she saved for holidays, her hair pinned up, no makeup. I saw her nervously adjust the rearview mirror several times. I squeezed her hand. If you don't want to do this, we turn around right now. I promise. She forced a smile, but her hand was ice cold. The gates opened. This time, no butler. Benedict himself was waiting on the front steps, wearing a gray turtleneck, silver hair neatly combed, holding a bouquet of pure white daisies. He bowed deeply as Mom stepped out of the truck. Thank you for coming, Mara. She only gave a tiny nod, her eyes fixed on the ground. We walked into the main hall. Soft crystal chandelier light, slow piano music drifting from the living room, the scent of pine and cinnamon. Only about 10 guests, all older, talking quietly. I exhaled in relief. No lavish party like I'd feared. Then everything collapsed in a single second. The living room doors opened and Rosalind Wynne walked in. She was beautiful in the cold, polished way of old money. Platinum blonde hair in an elegant updo, a long black silk dress, a diamond necklace glittering. She held a champagne flute, smiled politely at the guests. Then her gaze swept the hall and stopped. Stopped dead on my mother's face. Time froze. I saw every stage on Rosalind's face. The smile vanished. Lips trembled. The flute slipped from her fingers and shattered on the marble, champagne spreading like blood. Her face went white as death. Eyes wide with horror, as if she were staring at a corpse that had just stood up. Her voice cracked, high-pitched and broken. "Sister? Why? Why aren't you dead?" The entire hall went silent. Rosalind lunged forward 2 steps, her finger pointed straight at my mother, shrieking. "You were supposed to be dead. I pushed you into the river myself. How are you still alive? How dare you come back here?" Mom stood rooted, eyes huge, then suddenly clutched her head. I heard her let out a heart-wrenching cry of pain, as if I could actually hear something ripping inside her skull. She staggered, hands groping for support, then collapsed onto the cold marble floor. "Mom, Mom, wake up." I dropped to my knees and scooped her up. She was completely unconscious, her face chalk white, lips turning blue. I heard Benedict shouting for help, guests panicking, but it all became a distant roar in my ears. I carried Mom outside, barefoot over broken glass, without feeling it. Behind me, Rosalind was still screaming. "She's a ghost. She's a demon." Benedict's voice roared for someone to shut her up. I laid Mom in the back seat, jumped behind the wheel, and floored it to the nearest hospital. In the rearview mirror, I saw Benedict's black Bentley racing behind us, headlights flashing like it was weeping. Northgate Private Hospital. I carried Mom into the ER, yelling for doctors. Benedict ran in after me, his face drained of blood, frantically asking nurses questions. They wheeled her away, leaving us sitting in stunned silence on the plastic chairs in the hallway. An hour later, the doctor came out. Not life-threatening, but an extremely severe psychological shock. "She needs complete rest. Avoid all strong triggers." I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. When I entered the room, Mom was sitting by the window, fluorescent light falling on her deathly pale face. She stared out at the drizzling rain, eyes sunken, unblinking. I whispered, "Mom, you're awake." She turned, but those weren't my mother's eyes anymore. Empty. Distant. Like a soul had left the body. Benedict stepped in behind me, his voice trembling. Mara, I'm so sorry. I never imagined Rosalind would. I didn't know." Mom looked at him. Just looked. No anger, no fear, only cold, faraway emptiness, as if she were gazing at a stranger from another life. He bowed his head and backed out. The days that followed were hell. Mom came home, but she was no longer herself. She spoke little, smiled less, often sat for hours by the window, staring at the river, clutching Dad's old wool scarf. Some evenings I came home and found her whispering to the empty air, "Juniper? Who is Juniper?" Then falling silent the moment she saw me. I asked Mom. She only shook her head with a forced smile. "I'm fine. Don't worry." But I knew she was lying. And I knew that deep inside her mind, a door had just been kicked open. And the darkness was pouring out, swallowing her piece by piece. At night, I lay in bed listening to her slow, steady footsteps, pacing the house like a sleepwalker. I was too terrified to sleep, clutching the old file under my pillow, asking myself, does the truth really set us free? Or does it only drag us all deeper into the abyss? In the days following the party at Wynn Estate, my mother became a ghost inside her own home. She still cooked, still did laundry, but every movement was slow, lifeless. Some nights, I woke to the sound of muffled crying. I crept down the hallway and found her curled up on the kitchen floor, clutching her head, murmuring strange names. Juniper. Rosalind, don't. Then, falling silent the moment I turned on the light. I hugged her. She went stiff in my arms, then gently pushed me away. "I'm fine, son. Go back to sleep." I couldn't sleep anymore. A suffocating dread clung to me like a black shadow. I started noticing everything. Strange cars driving slowly past the house. A silhouette flashing past the window at midnight. dogs barking furiously down the street. I installed motion sensor lights in the yard, checked the locks 3 times before bed, and kept my phone fully charged on the nightstand. But I never expected it to come so fast. Tuesday morning. Pouring rain. I was driving on the highway towards Seattle for work, the radio playing a sad old song. Suddenly, my chest seized as if someone had grabbed my heart and squeezed. The feeling was so strong I had to pull over, gasping for air. I couldn't explain it. I just knew I had to go home. Right now. I whipped the truck around in the middle of the highway, floored it, rain spraying wildly from the tires. 30 minutes later, I tore down the red dirt road to the house. From a distance, I saw the front door standing wide open, rain blowing straight onto the wooden floor. My heart stopped for a beat. I skidded into the yard, jumped out without killing the engine, and ran inside. The sound of breaking dishes. Gasping breaths. A struggle. I froze in the kitchen doorway. A tall man in a black raincoat, his face completely covered, was kneeling on top of my mother. His gloved hands were pulling a plastic zip tie tight around her throat. Mom was thrashing weakly, her nails clawing at the air, face purple, eyes rolling back. I didn't think. I roared like an animal and charged. My shoulder slammed into his back. We both crashed to the floor. He was heavier than I expected. Muscles bulging under the raincoat. I punched, scratched, bit, anything I had. He spun. His fist caught my temple and made the world spin, but I didn't let go. I grabbed his hair and slammed his head into the floor again and again. Let go of my mother. Furniture flew. Chairs overturned. Vases shattered. The dining table flipped. The air stank of blood. Mom coughed and wheezed, crawling away, her hands clutching her throat. The masked man realized he was losing. He shoved me hard. My back slammed into the cabinets, pain exploding through me. He vaulted through the kitchen window, glass exploding outward, raced across the yard, and leapt into a waiting black SUV. I staggered after him, just managing to catch the license plate before it sped away in the rain. WYN 774. I wanted to chase him, but Mom's choking gasp spun me around. Mom, are you okay? She lay curled on the floor, the zip tie leaving angry red welts around her neck, eyes closed, but still breathing. I scooped her onto the sofa, hands shaking as I dialed 911. Someone broke into my house. My mother was strangled. Hurry. 142, Riverbend Road, Ashford. While waiting for the police, I knelt beside her, stroking her hair, crying like a madman. Mom, say something. Where does it hurt? She opened her eyes, breathing shallow, but forced a crooked smile. I'm okay, my boy. 2 officers arrived in 15 minutes, soaked. Red and blue lights painted the whole property. They photographed the scene, dusted for prints, took my statement while my hands still trembled. I told them everything. How my gut had screamed at me. The only thing I remembered was the plate. When they left, the house sank into a deathly silence. Only the rain drumming on the roof and Mom's faint breathing. She sat on the old sofa, staring at the blood-smeared, glass-strewn floor. For a long, long time. Then she lifted her head and looked at me. For the first time in weeks, her eyes were no longer empty. They blazed with pain and a resolve I had never seen before. Rowan, sit down. I have to tell you the truth. I knelt beside her and took her hands. She drew a deep, shuddering breath and began, her voice trembling but clear, as if tearing 30-year-old memories out of her skull piece by piece. I was Juniper Hawthorne. I fell in love with Benedict at first sight. We were going to get married, but Rosalind, my identical twin sister, was obsessed with him. She was insanely jealous. She made up lies, accused me of cheating, made Benedict doubt me. The day I drove to meet him to clear everything up, Rosalind followed me. She cut me off on the bridge. We fought horribly. She stormed off first, but then came back and rammed the back of my car. I went over the railing into the river. I thought I was dead. She stopped, tears rolling down her cheeks. When I woke up, I remembered nothing. Your father saved me, gave me a new name, cared for me, loved me, gave me a new life. I didn't want to remember the past because I was terrified. If I did, I would lose everything I had now. I had you. A family. Happiness. I thought Rosalind would never find me. She looked at me, eyes red. But that day at Wynn Estate, when I heard Rosalind scream, everything came flooding back. I remembered it all. I was afraid to speak because I didn't want to destroy this life. Didn't want you in danger. But now, I almost died. I can't stay silent anymore. Rosalind is behind this attack. I'm certain of it. Rage boiled in my veins. I shot to my feet and roared, "I'm calling the police right now. She's going to pay." Mom gripped my hand hard, her voice firm. "No, we have no proof. And my sister, she's rich. Powerful. She'll deny everything. You'll be in danger. Let me think first." I clenched my fists until my nails drew blood, not even noticing. I nodded. She was right. But I also knew this wasn't the end. This was only the beginning of the real nightmare. After that night, I never left my mother alone again. I took indefinite leave from work, installed cameras everywhere, and slept with a folding knife under my pillow. Mom, on the contrary, grew calmer in a way that terrified me. She no longer sat staring blankly out the window. She cleaned the house, cooked old familiar dishes, even smiled at me. But that smile was cold, like someone who had decided to walk straight into fire. 3 days after the attack, I knelt in front of her. "Mom, we can't keep hiding. Next time, it won't just be one masked man. Rosalind won't stop. We have to tell Benedict. He's the only one with enough power to protect you." She looked at me for a long time, then nodded. "All right. Take me to him." I called Benedict. He picked up on the first ring, his voice hoarse from sleepless nights. "Rowan, what is it?" "I have something important to tell you. Mom and I are coming over." An hour later, we were at Wynn Estate. The moment we stepped into the main hall, I felt a thick, oppressive silence enveloping everything. No staff, no guests, just the soft glow of the crystal chandelier falling on cold marble like a frozen winter lake. Benedict appeared without a word, motioned for us to follow, and led us straight to his study. A dark, oak-paneled room smelling of old tobacco and leather, heavy with decades of secrets. He closed the door, turned to my mother, his voice trembling. "Mara, are you all right?" "The attack," Rowan told me. Mom cut him off. She took one step forward, stood directly in front of him, and looked him straight in the eye. "Benedict," she said, her voice steady, unshaking. I remember everything now. The world stopped. Benedict froze. His face went ashen, lips moving soundlessly. Then he staggered back a step, hands reaching out as if to touch her, but afraid she would vanish. Tears welled up and rolled down his wrinkled cheeks. "Juniper, you really remember?" Mom nodded. "Yes. I remember everything. I remember you. The afternoons on Cannon Beach, the ring you hid in your coat pocket, the rainy night on the Nisqually Bridge, and how Rosalind pushed me into the river." Benedict broke. He collapsed his knees, wrapped his arms around her as if she might dissolve, and sobbed. Deep, wrenching sobs that echoed through the huge room. The cries of a child who had lost his mother for 33 years and just found her again. "Juniper, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I searched for you all these years. I thought you were dead." Mom stroked his hair gently, but her eyes stayed dry. She let him cry for a long time, then softly pushed him away, her voice still calm. "Benedict, listen to me. 3 days ago, Rosalind hired someone to kill me. The second time." Benedict's face changed instantly. He rose, eyes blazing with a fury I had never seen in a 70-year-old man. "Son, show him the license plate." I held up my phone. Photo of Wynn 774. Benedict stared, knuckles turning white as he gripped the phone. His voice dropped to ice. "Fine. Leave the rest to me." Within 24 hours, Wynn Estate became a war room. Private security, lawyers, investigators, financial experts, ex-FBI, everyone mobilized. Screens glowed. Printers whirred. Phones rang nonstop. Mom and I sat and watched them peel back Rosalind's layers like an onion. They traced Wynn 774 to a shell company registered in Delaware. Dig deeper. The sole beneficiary? Rosalind W. Bank records showed 3 transfers of $150,000 each to the driver, sent days before the attack. Traffic cameras. The black SUV circling our house for 10 straight days. Then they dug into the past. They found Mom's old green Volvo in an Ashford evidence impound. Still there, rusted, dusty, with clear rear-end damage. Metallic green paint chips cross-referenced with Rosalind's 1991 insurance file. Her Mercedes had a full front-end rebuild the week after the accident, listed as a minor collision. Everything matched perfectly. Benedict sat in front of the screens, his hands shaking as he held the documents. He said nothing for a long time. Then, in a broken whisper, "I slept next to a murderer for 33 years. The confrontation happened exactly 4 days later, in the same grand living room where Rosalind had once screamed, "Why aren't you dead?" Rosalind walked in, wearing a crimson dress, lips blood red, smirking when she saw my mother. "Oh, dear sister is back. What act are you putting on this time?" Mom stood tall, her voice like ice. "Rosalind. Why? 2 attempts to murder your own twin sister just for a man. Do you even know what it means to be human?" Rosalind laughed. A shrill, piercing laugh. "Human? You're the venomous snake. You stole Benedict from me. I was the one he loved first. You barged in, Benedict stood." He walked over and slapped her hard across the face. The sharp crack silenced the entire room. Then he threw the stack of evidence at her feet. License plate, transfers, car records, old crime scene photos, everything. Rosalind bent down, hands shaking as she flipped through the pages. Her face went from red to white to green. "No, impossible. Where did you get?" Benedict roared. "You killed Juniper twice. You lived in my house, slept beside me, smiled at me while you pushed your own sister off a bridge and hired a thug to strangle her. I was blind for 33 years. Rosalind collapsed, clutching his legs, sobbing and begging. "I loved you. I just wanted you to be mine. She deserved to die. She came back to steal you again." Just then, the doors burst open. 6 federal agents marched in, followed by lawyers and a prosecutor. "Rosalind Wynn, you are under arrest for first-degree attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and financial fraud." The handcuffs clicked. Rosalind screamed, thrashing, her hair wild, makeup running. She turned one last time, eyes bloodshot, glaring at my mother. "You witch! I curse you! You took everything from me." Benedict turned away, refusing to look. The doors closed. The screaming faded, then stopped. The room fell silent. Benedict sank into an armchair, hands covering his face, shoulders shaking. Mom walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder. I stood behind her, my hand on hers. Outside the window, the rain had stopped. A weak ray of sunlight broke through the clouds, falling across the floor, right where Rosalind had just knelt. The truth, though late and soaked in blood, had finally won. But that victory didn't bring instant laughter. It only brought silence. Heavy, wounded silence that hadn't yet healed. The trial lasted 6 straight weeks, turning the Seattle federal courthouse into a media circus. Every morning, I drove Mom there. We had to push through a forest of lenses, reporters shouting her name like she was a movie star. "Mrs. Hawthorne, will you forgive your sister? Mr. Wynn, do you regret marrying a murderer?" I held Mom's hand tight, shielding her with my body, while Benedict followed behind, his face stone cold, not answering a single question. Inside the courtroom, the air was even thicker. Rosalind sat in the defendant's chair, still trying to keep her initial haughtiness. Hair in a high bun, elegant black dress, blood-red lipstick. But by the 3rd day, the mask began to crack. Benedict's lawyer, a tall, thin man with a voice sharp as a blade, presented the evidence one by one. Bank transfers, the license plate from the attack, the 1991 insurance file, and the green Volvo pulled from the Nisqually River, still bearing the clear rear-end dent and flecks of metallic green paint. At first, Rosalind sneered, calling it all fabrication and slander. But when photos of her Mercedes after its full front-end rebuild appeared on the giant screen, she started shaking. When the witness, Her former bodyguard, Marcus Hale, took the stand and testified that Rosalind herself had paid him to take care of the woman in Ashford. She leapt to her feet and shrieked, "Traitor! I paid you to kill her, not to sell me out." The courtroom erupted in gasps. The judge pounded the gavel. I sat there, my face white, my nails digging into the armrest until they drew blood. Mom testified in week 4. She walked to the stand in her old forest green wool dress, hair in a low bun, no makeup. She recounted the rainy night on the bridge, her voice calm, clear, never once looking at Rosalind. When she said, "I heard my own sister laughing as my car went into the water," the entire room fell dead silent. I saw Rosalind's head drop, shoulders trembling. I couldn't tell if it was crying or rage. Sentencing day came on a freezing November morning. The judge, an older woman with stern eyes, read the verdict without emotion. Rosalind Wynne, conspiracy to commit murder in the current year and related charges. Sentence, 28 years imprisonment. No possibility of parole. The gavel fell like thunder. Rosalind jumped up one last time, screaming like a madwoman. "I'm not guilty. She stole everything from me." 2 officers forced her down, cuffed her, and dragged her away. She turned one final time, eyes burning with hatred and fear toward my mother. I hugged Mom. She didn't cry. She only whispered, "It's over, son." After the trial, Benedict moved fast and decisively. He filed for divorce that same week. He revoked every asset ever transferred to Rosalind, houses, shares, trusts, everything redirected to a new charity foundation named after Juniper Hawthorne. He held an outdoor press conference, no microphone, no theatrics. He simply stood in front of hundreds of cameras, bowed deeply, and said, "I was blind for 33 years. I let the woman I loved suffer and kept a murderer by my side. I am sorry to Juniper, to Mara, and to everyone hurt by my stupidity." He answered no questions. He just turned and walked away. A month later, he sold Wynne Estate. He bought a tiny wooden house, 1 dirt road away from ours, right by the river. Old shingles, a mossy roof, a wild vegetable garden, a rotting fence. He fixed it himself, hammering nails, painting walls, planting young pine trees. I'd come home and find him in an old t-shirt and muddy jeans, hands scratched and bleeding. But his eyes were bright every time he finished something small. He started coming by our house every day. No fancy clothes, no expensive gifts, just a simple lunchbox or a warm bag of pastries from the town bakery. He fixed Mom's fence, changed burned-out bulbs, chopped winter firewood. Some evenings I'd come home and find him on his knees in the garden, hands caked in dirt, planting more white daisies, the flowers Mom loved when she was young. At first, Mom kept her distance. Polite thanks. Then the door closed. But gradually, she left the door open. Let him sit at the kitchen table. Drink the herbal tea she brewed. Let him talk about the old days, his voice rough with emotion. He asked for nothing. He just stayed close, quietly, as if saying, "This time, I'm not going anywhere." Then one late autumn evening, the air crisp, pine needles covering the yard. We sat in our little kitchen. The old familiar smell of baking apple pie and crackling firewood in the stove. Benedict had brought a bottle of red wine from his old cellar, but none of us touched it. We just sat drinking tea, listening to the river outside. Mom looked at him for a long, long time. Then she set her cup down, her hands trembling. "Benedict, there's something I've never told anyone. Not even Rowan." He looked up, eyes worried. "Tell me." "I'm listening." Mom took a deep, shaky breath. "That year, when the accident happened, I was pregnant. Almost 3 months. Time stopped." Benedict froze. His face went white, fingers clenching until the knuckles were bloodless. He stared at Mom, then at me, then back at Mom, eyes wide with disbelief. You're saying the baby." Mom nodded, tears finally falling. "Rowan is your son." I felt the world shatter around me, then slowly piece itself back together into something completely new. I looked at Mom. I looked at him. At the woman who raised me on toast and fairy tales. At the man who had searched for her for 33 years, who had wept in front of me, who had knelt in the rain just to watch her from afar. My father, the gentleman who saved her, gave her a new name, loved her unconditionally, had been gone 10 years. But this man was the one who gave me life. Benedict stood, swaying like he was drunk. He stepped toward me, hands shaking as he reached out, then stopped midair, afraid I would vanish. "Rowan, son, you're my son." I couldn't speak. I just nodded, tears spilling over. He pulled me into his arms. A strong, warm embrace that smelled of pine and salt tears. I felt his old heart pounding wildly against my chest. Mom stood, walked over, and the three of us held each other in that small kitchen under the warm yellow light. Tears flowed freely, but this time they weren't bitter. They were sweet, full of joy overflowing. Outside, the autumn wind blew gently, carrying the scent of pine and river water. After 33 years of darkness, we had finally found the light. A year passed like the blink of an eye. My mother, Mara Fletcher, or Juniper Hawthorne, depending on which memory called her more strongly, recovered like an ancient tree struck by lightning, yet stubbornly turning green again. Her memories returned little by little. The smell of coffee Benedict used to brew when they were young, the bright laughter of 15-year-old Rosalind, and the husky singing voice of my late father, the man who had passed away as he sat by the fireplace lulling me to sleep. The headaches vanished completely. She laughed more, slept better, and for the first time in many years, she could look straight into the mirror without seeing a stranger. I was different. I was no longer just learning to live with myself. I started working at Wynn Global Holdings, but not in some fancy Seattle office. Benedict gave me a small project, converting the lighting systems for the entire chain of art museums he sponsored. The job took me all over the Northwest, climbing ladders, measuring lux, calculating light angles. Exactly my specialty. He didn't play favorites or interfere. When he handed me the contract, he said only one thing: "Do it well and you stay. Do it poorly and you're out." I don't raise my son on handouts. I grinned, signed, and threw myself into it like a madman. 6 months later, the project finished 2 weeks early and 30% under budget. He just nodded, clapped me on the shoulder. "Good work, son. Now come home for dinner." Benedict changed the most. He sold nearly all his money. The little wooden house next to ours is now properly fixed up. White paint, red tile roof, neat vegetable rows, brand new pine fence. He cooks for himself, does his own laundry, drives his old Jeep to the market at 5 in the morning. He stops by our house every single day without fail. Some days he brings his toolbox and quietly fixes the squeaky window Mom has complained about forever. Some days he sits in the kitchen, helping her knead bread dough, hands covered in flour, grinning like a kid. Some days he takes me fishing at the old bend in the river, just the two of us, saying little, listening to the water and the birds. His love for Mom is no longer the wild flame of youth. It's more like the Nisqually River outside, deep, slow, and never running dry. He doesn't ask her to call him darling like before. Doesn't ask her to wear the green dress from long ago. He just wants to be near. To see her smile. To see her healthy. To see her alive. Mom knows. She is grateful, deeply grateful. She brews him herbal tea, listens to his stories from the old days, even knitted him a charcoal gray scarf with her own hands once. But she always keeps a small distance, like a thin glass wall everyone can see, but no one dares to break. I asked her once, on Christmas night that year, after he had gone home, and it was just the two of us by the fireplace. "Mom, do you still love him?" She looked at me for a long time, firelight painting golden streaks across her face. "Yes, son, very much. But I also loved your father, the man who pulled me from the river, dried my hair, taught me how to live again when I didn't even know who I was. Those two loves don't cancel each other out, but I can't betray the man who's gone. I can only give Benedict friendship, care, and family. Half my heart will always belong to the husband who saved me twice. Once from death. Once from loneliness." I hugged her. She hugged me back, tighter than ever. Benedict understands. He never asks for more. Once I saw him standing in the garden, watching Mom pick apples, his eyes shining but his mouth smiling. Later, he whispered to me, "All I need is to see your mother healthy and happy. Whatever years I have left, I'll spend making up for the past. Even if all I can do is stay close." I have never seen such patience. I changed too. I'm no longer just Rowan Fletcher, the quiet guy from a small town. I learned to call him Dad naturally, to listen to his business stories without getting bored, to say proudly to colleagues, "My father is Benedict Wynne." I still fix lights. Still love the smell of bulb oil and old wood. But now I have a father to share things with, to ask advice from, to lean on when I'm tired. Some evenings I come home and the three of us sit around the table. Mom's old beef stew. Dad telling a joke from decades ago that makes her laugh until tears come. And me in the middle, looking at these two gray-haired people and feeling impossibly lucky. I have two fathers. One who gave me life. One who gave me a life. I have a mother strong enough to rise from ashes twice. And now we have each other. Not perfect, not loud, but real and lasting. One summer afternoon the following year, I stood on the old wooden bridge over the Nisqually River, the exact spot where Mom went into the water 35 years ago. The current was still strong, but now the water was clear, sparkling in the sun. I tossed a stone in and watched the ripples spread and fade. Benedict walked up beside me, holding 2 cold beers. "What are you thinking about, son?" I smiled and took one. "I'm thinking, if Mom hadn't washed up here that night, if Dad hadn't saved her, if you hadn't found her, we wouldn't have today." He motioned for me to sit on the bridge railing. We dangled our legs over the edge, river breeze cool against our faces. "Fate can be cruel," he said, his voice low and warm. "But it's also fair. It took 33 years from us, but it gave us the rest of our lives in return. And I'm not wasting a single second of what's left." I clinked my bottle against his. In the distance, Mom stood on the riverbank in a white dress, fluttering in the wind, holding a bouquet of white daisies. She waved at us, smiling radiantly. I looked at him, looked at her, looked at the glittering river, and I knew, no matter how dark the past had been, this present, this quiet, simple present, was the most beautiful reward life could ever give us. One windless autumn afternoon, golden leaves drifted down slowly like fragments of memory, letting go of the branch. The three of us quietly drove to the small cemetery hidden behind the pine forest. No one had planned it, yet we all knew today was the day we had to come. The 15th anniversary of his passing. The man who pulled my mother from the icy river, gave her a new name, and gave me a childhood filled with the smell of toasted bread and fishing trips by the water. Even though he is gone, his presence still lives in every breath our family takes. His grave lies in the quietest corner, the simple stone engraved, Elias Fletcher, 1959 to 2014. Beloved husband, father, and the man who chose love when the whole world turned away. Mom knelt before it and gently placed a bouquet of pure white daisies, the flower he loved most. "Because they're like you," she'd once said. Simple, yet beautiful. Pure. She didn't sob like in previous years. Only a few silent tears fell, soaking into the red earth. "Thank you, Elias," she whispered, her voice soft but clear. "Thank you for giving me a second life. For giving me Rowan. For teaching me what love is when I no longer remembered who I was. You will forever be the most important man in my heart." I stood behind her, my hand on her shoulder. Benedict stood beside me, one step back, cap in hand, his head deeply bowed. He said nothing, but I knew he was saying thank you to the man who had loved and protected this family in his place for so many years. I looked at my adoptive father's gravestone, then at Benedict, then at Mom. Standing between my two fathers, one who gave me life, one who gave me a life, I finally understood what true fortune means, amidst pain that once seemed impossible to survive. I looked back on my own journey. From the childhood days when I only knew Mom got terrible headaches whenever the past was mentioned, to the day I walked into the Wynne Estate Gallery and saw the painting that looked so much like her it chilled my blood. From the moment Mom collapsed upon hearing the name Juniper, to the night I carried her out of the mansion amid Rosalind's screams of horror. From nearly losing her to a zip tie around her throat, to the day we watched Rosalind dragged away in handcuffs. From the second I learned Benedict was my real father, to the quiet evenings the three of us sat by the fireplace, understanding each other without needing words. I once thought those losses were the end. Now I know they were only sharp turns, leading me to a different road. One of truth, forgiveness, and a love I never dared dream of. I realized Benedict's patience wasn't just love for Mom. It was silent atonement. A belated apology he thought he would never get to give. Cruel fate stole 33 years from him, but in its mercy, gave him the rest of his life to make amends. I learned that memory is a vital part of being human. But losing memory doesn't mean losing the value of life. Mom lived beautifully and fully for 33 years without a past. With love, kindness, warm loaves of bread, and bedtime hugs, she proved that a person can start over from zero and still build a warm family. I learned that silence can sometimes be the greatest form of sacrifice. Like the way Mom preserved her memory of Elias, refusing to let a returning old love overshadow the love that saved her from death. She chose to honor the man who was gone. Even though her heart still fluttered when Benedict brewed coffee exactly the way she liked it decades ago. I understood that family isn't only blood. Family is who stays when the storm hits. Who never lets go, even when the world collapses. Elias Fletcher saved my mother, gave her a new name, raised me for the first 19 years of my life. He didn't give me life, but he was my father in the most beautiful sense of the word. And Benedict Wynne, my biological father, who had to learn fatherhood from scratch with patience, humility, and the love of a man who once lost everything. Between the two of them, I am the luckiest person alive. I realize that truth, no matter how late it arrives, has a healing power. No empty words can match. It hurts. It rips open old wounds. But it is also what stitches broken lives back into a complete picture. From my own life, I drew one simple, yet profound lesson. No wound is meaningless. Every cut, every pain, every sleepless night leads us to a stronger, kinder, more grateful version of ourselves. If you are hearing these words and facing your own darkness, I only want to say one small thing. Don't run so fast trying to escape it. Keep one small light with you. Maybe patience. Maybe kindness. Maybe just one person you can trust. That light won't chase the darkness away instantly, but it will guide you through, step by step, until you see the light at the end of the tunnel. Forgiveness isn't about erasing someone else's guilt. Forgiveness is about freeing yourself from the invisible chains that have held you too long. And finally, I believe that loving the right person in the right way, no matter how late it comes, is always worth the wait. The way Mom waited 33 years to hear her real name spoken again. The way Benedict waited a lifetime to hold me once. The way Elias waited for Mom on that riverbank like fate itself. On a rainy night no one could have foreseen. If love is real, it will always find its way home. I stood up from Elias's grave, wiped my tears, and looked at Mom and Benedict, holding hands in silence, saying nothing. A gentle autumn breeze carried the scent of damp earth and fallen leaves. I smiled. This isn't a fairy tale happy ending. This is a real one. Quiet, simple, and beautiful enough to move the soul. And for me, that is more than enough. So, tell me, have you ever experienced a moment when a hidden truth changed everything you knew about your life, or about someone you love? What did you do? I'd really love to hear your thoughts.